Hey guys, I wanted to show you guys in a official video how to read and write to files. And that's pretty much the same way that you would print out to the screen and read from the keyboard, just some slight differences. So I will start from reading from a file. So before I get into reading from a file, let's pretend like we're reading from the keyboard. So that would be, let's see, we would make a scanner, scan equals new scanner system.in. Okay, we would try to compile that. That will not work because I have not imported stuff. So to do that, I would have to import java.util.scanner. I'm going to say star so I can get all the stuff so I don't have to re-import if I need something else from util. So that'll read that, and then say I want to read an integer. I'd say int x is equal to scan.nextInt, and I can print out, let's say, 10 times whatever that is. Maybe. Oh, I was waiting for me to type something in. So I type something in, it multiplies that by 10, and we're good to go. Okay, so let's read from a file. I have a file that I think is going to be interesting to work on. It is 4 megs of words. I'll make that a separate download so you don't have to download everything. But anyways, this is a big dictionary, and I'm going to go through and maybe we can find something interesting like the biggest palindrome or something like this. So anyways, so we have some unwieldy file that we want to read in. We don't want to do things by hand, so we're writing a program that can read it. So I don't want to read from the scanner. I don't want to read from system in. I want to read from a file. And so to do that, I have to put a file object right here where my cursor is. So to do that, well, there's a few ways I can do this. I can say file f is equal to new file, and that could be pointed to words.txt. I think that's what I saved it as. All right, and if we do that, then we can put f here, and we'll read from that. And it's going to complain to me, can't find symbol file. So that is another import. So I have to import java.io input output .star. And you could Google like Java file, and it would tell you that's where it's located. Anyways, so I'll compile it, and it will give me an exception now. So this is not telling me that it can't find anything. It's telling me that, hey, whenever I try to open up this file, that file might not be there. So I'm just going to give you the easiest fix for this. Any function that uses it, or a function that uses another function that uses this, hopefully that's not too confusing. Any function where you put some file input output stuff, you need to throw an exception. There's some other ways you can do this with try catches. If that makes sense to you, let's go with, feel free to use that, but I'm just going to say throw exception. I think it's throws exception. I always forget whether there's an S or not. Okay, so you're going to throw exception. That'll compile now, and if I try to run this will actually work. So let's go look at what words.txt has in it, and maybe that'll give us a clue what's happening. Let's see, words.txt. All right, so for some reason the first word is 2, so I read it as an int, and then it multiplied by 10, so everything's working out fine. But I can change this if I want to read words. I can change this from string and to next line, and that will get one of the lines, and I can do this over and over and over again. If I want to read every line in the file, I can do, well, let's just do an infinite while loop. I'll say while true, and I'll just read line after line, and I will print them. Oh, I'm going to zoom back up here for a second. So I made this file object, but I'm never going to use it after this, and so I usually tend to not make one, and then I just stick inside a scanner. I say new file. So a lot of times you'll look at my code and you'll see it this way. And so if you want to read from a file, you just throw this line down and you can change this to whatever file that you want to read from. Anyways, so here I'm going to print out each line. Boop. All right. If I run this, it will go through everything, and we haven't even gotten past the ABs yet. So anyways, this is quite a large file. You'd think that maybe it'd take forever to read if I didn't print it, but printing is a very slow process. So if I don't print something, I can go through the whole file in a blink of an eye. But if I like stop to print anything, that's going to slow things down. So let's do something simple. Let's find every word that has squirrel in it. Okay, so I'm going to say x is equal to x dot lower because I want to not worry about case. Actually, that's Python. To lower case, I want to say is Java's way to string manipulate that. And if I want to only print ones that have squirrel, I can say x dot contains squirrel, I think would work. All right, throw some curly brackets around that. All right, squirrel-tailed, squirreling, squirrelish, squirreled. Anyways, so quite a few. So anyways, so I have a way I can search through this. You'll notice at the end it throws an exception whenever I finally get to the end of the file and I can't read anymore. Because I just say wild truth, that's looping forever. So you can change this where it can actually end by actually using the scanner. So you can say scan, and I want you to keep on going while there's more things to read. So while it has a next line. If you're reading ints, you could say while it has next int. Or if you're reading doubles, you could say while it has next double. Whatever you want to do, you can put a has in there before you read it. So check what is there to read, and then you can read it. And then, you know, after we get done, I'm just going to print done just so you can see that I got out of that while loop. So open a file, loop while there's another line, get that line, lowercase it, see if it contains squirrel, print it out. There we go. That's everything. No error, finished, we're good. Okay, let's make it a little bit more interesting and practice functions. Let's check to see if we have a palindrome. So to check to see if something is a palindrome, actually, scratch that. I'm going to make it a little more interesting. I want to find all the anagrams of squirrel. I don't know if there are any. But let's see if we can find anagrams for squirrels. Anagrams are where you can rearrange the letters. So I'm going to make a function and a public, and it's going to return a Boolean. This is going to be static. Okay, public static Boolean. Boolean is going to tell me true or false. True or false is anagram. And so to test to see if something's an anagram, I have to have two different things and see if they have the same letters. So I'll have string A and string B. All right. And so I have to take these letters, and I want to see if each of these letters are in those letters. And so let's get after this. Okay. Trying to think of the easiest way here. I don't think Java has a way where you can just say how many letters are in this string of this kind, but if I did, that would be helpful. So in this case, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to make another function. just to make my life easier. Count letter. Okay, so I'm going to give it a string, and I'm going to give it a letter. And I want to be able to, if I have the string squirrel and I count letter R, it'll tell me 2. So I have to say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than s dot length, I plus plus. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to for loop through everything in the string. I'm going to get each individual letter. So I'm going to say string, I'll call this x equals s dot substring I comma I plus 1. All right, you might want to spend a second with that and make sure that makes sense. But that's going to loop through and get each individual letter of s. And then I want to add to a count. So I'll say if x not equals, because that won't work, I have to say dot equals a letter. So if I have the right letter, then I will say count plus plus. And then I can return count. Okay, so this function will tell me how many will count a certain letter in something. So before I go on and use this, let's go test that out. So I would say system.out.println, and I would print out, let's count letter, and let's give it squirrel. And let's count R. Let's put another R in here. Let's see, we'll say return true up here. It won't let me compile this until this function returns a Boolean, so I'll just give it a fake return right now. So I got 3. If you look at the first thing it printed out, so I'm just going to trudge along, and you could spend more time testing it, but I'm going to say this works. Okay, so to test if it's an anagram, I need to go through each letter in A, and I want to see how many of letters are in A and how many letters are in B of that particular letter. If I go through each one of them and they all agree with each other, and A and B are the same length, then I think you got an anagram. So, so I'll just start off first. If A dot length doesn't equal B dot length, then I can return false. Okay, so if I'm past this, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing I did before. I'm going to loop through A, and I get a particular letter. Okay, so I loop through A, and then I'm going to say if, so count letter, I'm going to count A, and I'm going to count that letter. So how many of the letter I'm looking at that's in A, how many does A have? And if that doesn't equal how many B has, then we're not an anagram. Okay, and then if we get all the way through the for loop, only after I check to see all the ways it couldn't be an anagram, can I say it is an anagram. Okay, so let's go test it out. So I will say is anagram, and I will give it 2 things that are anagrams. Rat and tar. Let's give it with something with two double letters of something. Okay, so that says true, and then if I change one of those letters up, And on a side note, this would be a good example of like you could Google it and like see how somebody else writes it. Make sure you understand it, internalize it, then integrate it into your code. Do not copy paste, but make sure you understand it, and then figure out how you can write it and where it makes sense to you. Okay, so now I want to go through and see if something is an anagram. So I can say, hey, if X, the thing I just read from the file, is an anagram with squirrel. And I'll be curious. I bet, I don't know, I don't want to lay any bets on this, but I think we'll just get squirrel, but we'll see. I get squirrel. Okay, let's do something. Super duper. Actually, has super duper in there. All right, let's do taco cat. I don't know. Takata and okay, so there we go. So we have a way we can find some anagrams. This isn't the most interesting results, but I'm going to stop there. So that's how we can read from a file and do some work on it. Very large file. It would be very hard to go through that by hand. Okay, so to write to a file, I have this other file where I'm just going to write. Let's make it really simple. I'm going to write 1 through 100 into a file. So let's just do that without writing it to a file. So let's just print it on the screen. So I would say for int I equals 0, I is less than 100, I plus plus. So I said I wanted to print 1 through 100. So right now I'm going to 0 through 99. I can modify this for loop a little bit, or I could set this to be 1 and this 101. I think I'm going to go with that way, and so I don't have to adjust I inside the for loop. And then I can say system.out.println, and I can print I. All right, so that printed that to the screen. Easy cheesy. So if I want to do it to a file, I'm going to have to import java.io.star, and the thing I'm importing are two things: file and print writer. So and print writer and file writer, or well, we'll see. I'll try this out. I haven't looked this up. I'm just guessing. Print writer, and I usually call my print writer out, and you'll see why I do that in a second. And I'll say new print writer. And I'm just going to attempt just to put the name of the file here, which is not going to work, but I will try. All right, file not found exception, so I need to throws exception. All right, doesn't seem to complain about any of that, so I will run this. And, well, I haven't written anything to the file. Okay, so I have this variable out that I can write to. And so to write to it, all you do is take off the system part of this, and now I'm going to use that variable, and I'm going to print to it. So all the same commands you can write, you can do for system out, you can do for just regular old out now. And so system.out will put it on the screen, and out will put it into the file. And I can run this. You won't see anything because it's writing to a file. And then if you go look in the file, there's output.txt, but there's nothing in it. And the reason there's nothing in it is because this, the computer has what's called a write queue. So whenever you want to write things to the disk, it wouldn't be smart to write it straight to the disk, because then you could like ping it with a lot of different requests, and then if it's like an old spinny disk, You know, the little arm would get, you know, too much of a workout, and you would hear all sorts of clicking and spinning and whirring. So what happens is it writes to memory, and then it will plan out some really nice smooth moves so it can like eventually get it all written down. Anyways, and Java has, I would consider it a bug. Other languages don't have this. Whenever you end a program, and if you haven't told it to clear that queue, it'll just forget it, and that file will never get that information. But in other languages, it'll dump the queue whenever you exit the program and make sure everything gets written to the file. Anyways, all you have to do for Java is say out.write, or close, sorry. And then you're done. You can't write to the file anymore. If you happen to want to like get stuff into the file but don't want to close out the file, you can do an out.flush, and then you can do more writes if needed. Sometimes it's nice to be able to do that. So, okay, so I will close this, and you will see all the stuff in the file. One through 100. Well, let's go make sure I get to 100. Yep. So that's it. You can mix and match, do some reading, do from a file, writing from a file, whatever you need to do. Again, it's almost as easy as reading from the user and printing onto the screen. There's just a little bit of extra overhead. So an extra import. Make sure you throw exceptions. You know, you have to make your print writer, just like you have to make scanner, and then you have to make sure you close so you actually have your information at the end. Anyways, hope that all makes sense. I will upload this video, and the file should be along with it if you guys want to play at home. All right. Be safe.